Hey, Doug and Pat here with another episode of the Wealthy Gym Owners. And today we're going to talk about building a brand that makes marketing easier. In today's landscape, marketing is more challenging, maybe in many cases more confusing than it's ever been during the time that I've been in business or even studying marketing. We've got so many different channels that people can market through. We've got just the way people navigate those channels, the way people consume information. It's just evolved so much. And I'm not necessarily here to judge whether that's right or wrong. I'm very much a realist that this is the landscape that we're in. And so it's our job to make the most of it. So we want to talk about building a brand that should make a lot of this stuff easier. And so, Doug, I'll ask you to kick us off, and then, I've got plenty to share on this one.
Yeah, I think when I first heard the word brands, I like way back, I immediately went to like, what's my logo? What's my colors? Some of the more, I guess, tactical branding. But I remember for our clients, you did a great branding and conversion presentation. And I think the brand, I've kind of shifted my mindset to like, who am I going to be known for in the community? Like, what am I going to be known for in the community? Not me as a person, but my company. What am I going to stand on that's different than everybody else? And so whether that's, demographic or what have you, we can unpack. But I think, maybe starting there is like branding is not, I mean, yes, your colors and your logo uh play a little small part here, but that's not really what we're talking about.
Yeah, I think that if we zoom out, branding is very much what you just alluded to. It's what are people saying about you when you're not around, when you're not influencing the conversation with your marketing or something like that. What do people know about you? What do people say about you? What do people think about you? And we want to essentially build a brand that kind of speaks for us when we're not around. People know who we help, they know what we do, they kind of have this perspective on who we're best for and what we're best at. And yeah, it's going to be incomplete a lot of times, but in today's landscape, if we think about the businesses that we know well, we can speak to them really quickly, right? Like nobody has any question. Like I don't like if I say Chick-fil-A, nobody's gonna really wonder like what are they known for? What do they do? They're gonna say chicken, friendly service, fast drive-through, whatever, right? Like I mean, there are things that just kind of roll off the tongue that we're really aware of. And we could do that about dozens and dozens of businesses. But in our industry, other than the big brands like a Planet Fitness, it often is a little murkier. People may know the name because maybe they've seen it somewhere. Maybe they've seen friends of theirs wearing your swag out, or they've seen you run a Facebook ad, or they've seen you, advertise on a local outfield at a baseball or softball field or something. But they don't know who you really are for or what you do. And if if we're wanting to build a relationship with people in our market, the first thing that we have to do is become visible. They need to be aware we exist. And you'd be probably amazed at how many businesses in your market that are invisible to you. I mean, there's probably not a week that goes by. I've lived in essentially the same neighborhood for almost 17 years. And the every week, at most every 2 weeks, there's a business that comes on my radar I had no idea existed because there wasn't a need. It wasn't something I was focused on. But if we're invisible, we can't move the relationship forward. So the first thing that we have to do is be visible to the people that we're trying to reach. Now, what's great about that is, for most of us, we have a general proximity and demographic that we're working with, right? Like in previous episode, Doug did a great job unpacking, like when they look at household income, they also look at household income by age. Like For Doug's business, 50 to 70, that's their sweet spot. So if we use that as an example, well, if I'm in my town, I need to know where the 50 to 70 year olds are spending their time, where do they live, where do they shop, frequent, visit, what's important to them. What do they read? What do they, I mean, what do they frequent? But then proximity to my facility, how far out are we going to spend our time? Now, I live in kind of the suburbs of Louisville, Kentucky, on the east, like far east side of Louisville, Kentucky. I don't go shop in the south part of Louisville. I don't go shop in the west part of Louisville. I don't do much of anything other than catch a minor league baseball game in downtown Louisville. So I kind of stay in my own little bubble. And that bubble is typically three, maybe on a stretch, 4 miles for 90% of what I do. And so I would look in that radius, like, okay, 3 to 4 miles, 50 to 70 year olds. What do I want to be known for? I want to be known as the person who, like, if I'm Doug's business, live better, longevity, quality of life, turn back the clock, all those fun things. And so, I want to make sure that my message is in front of those people all the time. And that can be done in a host of different ways. I can go out and be in the community and get outside my four walls and network. I can go be parts of affinity groups, whether it's Chamber of Commerce, whether it's a BNI group or other groups that have some sort of, footprint in our area. I can start sharing content online that is a peek behind the curtain in what we're doing. It's success stories that meet that kind of client demographic and the things that are important to them. I can really kind of reverse engineer. If I've got clients like that, I can ask. I can say, okay, who's your doctor? Do you go to a chiropractor? Do you go to a salon, a spa, massage therapist? Where do you shop? All those things. And I can say, well, I'm going to go be where they are. What HOA are you a part of? Can I go advertise there? Can I do anything in a relationship with them? I mean, I know, just speaking of my HOA, which probably isn't too far off from like Doug's demographic, and the one that I used to be in was spot on. Like, man, they have, concert nights and food trucks and everything else, and somebody can certainly be visible. They can be a sponsor, they can be involved. So some of this is being aware and stepping away from thinking linear marketing, right? Like the days of Facebook ad to woohoo form to sign up for your challenge, those have passed, right? Like those are a dinosaur. Now, if your consumer is interested in reaching the goals that we just kind of touched on there, all those things would fit like Doug's audience. They're probably going to click on something. They're going to look at your website. They're going to look at your Google reviews. They may click around and watch a little bit of your social media. They may ask a friend if they've ever heard of you. And all of this probably happens before they ever actually come in contact with you, right? We now operate in easily the most informed consumer landscape that has ever existed. People have everything at their fingertips, and if they aren't sure, they can simply ask AI and it'll give them something. So we've got to be where they're looking, and we don't really get to control the conversation. So that's where branding really, really comes into play. We have to put things out there that at least steer the conversation, because we don't get to control it. It's not this, they call in and we control the dialogue. It's, are they seeing the things that keep this moving forward, that get them to lean into the conversation and be interested? Are they, are the objections that they might internally have based on previous experiences or doubts they may have in the business or in themselves, are we able to kind of move past some of those before they ever come in contact with us? Because if we do a good job, the branding makes everything that we do from a kind of a monthly marketing plan so much easier. Doug, I know I just ran through a bunch of stuff. First of all, what did I miss? And then anything you want to add to it?
I just want to double down on one thing you said just to make sure it sticks with everybody listening is this becomes so much easier when you know and pick one specific person, one specific demographic, one specific avatar, however you want to think about it. Because, we don't have the budget of a Planet Fitness. And so we don't have the budget of a Chick-fil-A, right? Like pick any of those examples that you previously used. We don't have those budgets. And so whether that's a monetary budget or a time allocation of time, we don't have either of those in comparison. So if we're going to make, that 3 to 4 mile radius that you talked about, if we're going to make it so that we're super visible, it becomes a lot easier in the monthly marketing plan. If I know my demographic is 50 to 70, there's a whole ton of businesses I'm not even going to waste my time with, right? Like I know the young hip salons where all the 20 and 30-year-olds go. Like I don't need to waste my time there. I need to go to the salon where all the women 50 to 70 go. The Are they a Trader Joe's kind of Whole Foods shopper, or are they the local grocery store kind of, retail? Like where am I going? When you narrow that audience down, I think that's why like we're so big in that with our coaching clients. Narrow that down, like, examples. We have a client that only works with soccer players. That's extremely easy to know where soccer players are, right? I'm not even talking sports in general. I'm just talking a single sport. Where do those kids and where do those parents spend their time? We have a client that only works with like post rehab clients. And so all of their time branding is spent relationship building with the docs, relationship building with the PTs, hosting workshops to bring people in. So rather than having to come up with this elaborate and really frankly unrealistic marketing plan or this complete feeling of overwhelm from a marketing plan standpoint, I think part of the power of this branding stuff is you can zoom in on that avatar to make it a little bit easier. The other thing that I'd be curious to have you unpack more is in that presentation you did to our clients, you talked about the power of binging and the prospects who consumed, I believe the number was 47 minutes are more likely to buy. So talk more about that.
Yeah, so I think that if we step out of the role of business owner and we think about ourselves as a consumer, if we're going to make any sort of meaningful purchase, and make no mistake, the things that we're selling are very meaningful purchases because it's not only a substantial amount of money, but it's an investment of time. It's getting out of your comfort zone. It's committing to something that requires repeated visits. For people to make something beyond just an impulse buy, typically they need to spend some time with that brand. They're going to do a little bit of a deep dive, some discovery. And, there was a gentleman that I was in a mastermind group with that opened my eyes to this. And then I started really kind of dig in. I'm like, man, that's brilliant. He had done some research on the people that had purchased from him, and they had typically on average spent at least 47 minutes consuming content that they had provided. Now, that content could have been delivered through a variety of different mediums, videos, PDFs, didn't matter, right? But there's this familiarity with a brand. There's a familiarity that, okay, now I know them well enough to know if I'm ready to take this next step. And if you think about our business, man, how important is that? How valuable is feeling like, hey, I know what these coaches are about. I know that I'd probably feel comfortable there. I fit. They're in alignment with what my goals are. They can address some of the things that may have been sticking points in the past. And it's hard in today's landscape to get there 30 seconds at a time with social media posts. Now, I will tell you from my own personal experience, if you're watching this podcast, listening to it, you may be familiar with my daily newsletter. I sent it for like 20 years and 6-ish months now without missing a day. I can't tell you the number of people that I would sit down with in a mastermind meeting or whatever else, and they're like, I was on your newsletter for 5 years before I bought, or I was on your newsletter. Like at one point, we did a kind of an informal survey, and the average was 2+ years. Now, that, it was a slow sales cycle, but it was relatively effective for at least a decade, decade and a half, really. Today's market's a little bit different, right? It's harder to get, like, I mean, if they're spending, let's say I send out daily newsletters and they read two of them a week. I mean, because I don't expect people are going to read 7 days of it. They read two, and it takes them 1 minute, right? I mean, we are 6 months out, and that's if I can hold their attention that long. And most people don't just consume things on a rhythm, 2 minutes a week for 6 months, right? So we need to get people to binge. Now, I will say there are a couple different ways to view this, right? Like the first is almost kind of this playlist mentality. If you think about how people consume podcasts or how people consume Netflix, they very rarely watch shows the way that I would have grown up. You watch it on Wednesday night at 7, and then next week you watch it on Wednesday night at 7. If they like it, they watch a bunch of it, they binge it. Podcasts, I don't really bounce around from this podcast to this podcast. I'll end out, if I like one, I'm going to listen to 6, 8, 10 of them in a row at least. We need to be doing more of that with the content that we're putting out. Make sure that there's a clear, bingeable path, right? Like let people know and do things in a multi-channel format. Like, hey, if you like this, maybe our call to action is go check out this other stuff or reply back and I'll send you over a link to this playlist, or I'll send you over, this video series I did on this specific topic. So we're making it easy for them to kind of go down the rabbit hole and feel like they get to know us better and we are the best possible solution to help them achieve their goals. That's one side of it. The other side is something I think that we've been preaching for 20-ish years at this point, is get them through the door. Doug has a wonderful sweatshirt a client made for him that kind of speaks to that same exact thing. But I mean, it's the most immersive kind of binge-ish experience they can have, because you have what is largely undivided attention for 45 minutes, an hour, multiple hours if it's an extended trial. And very rarely outside of your four walls do you ever have undivided attention, right? So, get them through your four walls and let them experience what you do. Now, if you are somebody that has been hesitant to do free experiences or whatever else, please know that the biggest franchises on the planet give everybody a free day. So, there's something to be said for that. You can test drive cars, you go to open houses. Free is not your enemy, but free is not the only path to this. We just need to reduce the perceived risk, the friction. We need somebody to come in, and we know if we spend an hour with them, they're going to make an informed decision. And frankly, I think for most of us as business owners, that's what we want. We want them to make an informed decision. It's kind of a tryout for both parties. Is this going to be a good fit? Because if we get people to make an informed decision, then retention skyrockets, referrals go up because they're in the right place, right? They didn't just respond to a Groupon. They didn't just, dip their toe in the water. They came in, they experienced this, they said, this is the right place for me. And no matter what you do on a video, no matter what you do on a podcast, there's no other way that's as powerful as to get them out of their comfort zone into the room and then actually demonstrate that you can help. So, I think in a perfect world, you combine those two things, the bingeable stuff that they can consume in many ways anonymously, and then the experiential side of things where we just work relentlessly to get people inside our business, get them through the door. Now we can really establish our brand. We're not out there wondering what the market thinks of us. We've kind of choreographed the experience as much as we possibly can. And the market knows who we are. They know if we're for them, if maybe we're not for them. And That's going to make every offer that you make more powerful. It's going to make every ad that you run. Final point here before I, throw it back to Doug is I see a lot of people who run ads and they think they just exist in a vacuum, right? They act like, oh, I run this ad and it's magically going to act like a vending machine that just spits out people with credit card in hand that come and buy. That's not how people operate. That's not how people think. That's not how we think in our own lives. So if we can kind of seed the environment around them, when they see the ad, there's already some familiarity. There's already awareness. There's already maybe a level of comfort. They're ready to explore a little bit deeper, and that ad gets to serve as this trigger for a more interactive conversation to move them towards us. And if we're doing it right, and then after they've clicked on the ad, if they do bounce around, they're seeing the things we want them to see. Everything gets so much easier. So, Doug, hopefully I did enough deep dive on that we covered some ground.
I think we did. I think we did. I mean, I'd end with a tactic if you'd like to try this. I think one of the best plays right now in the marketplace is to host live workshops in your facility. And, there's so many ways that this helps all of what we're talking about, right? The whole get them in the door. So now they're not having to come in the door to work out. They're just sitting and listening. Maybe you have a practical component, maybe you don't, but either way, they're getting through your door. They're consuming you for 60 to 90 minutes. But then speaking of kind of zooming in on your avatar, make the workshop as specific to your avatar as you can. And now when you're marketing that workshop, that's your ads, that's who you're connecting with in the community. So you become known for an expert in that thing. So just to kind of take all of this and boil it into an action item to run with, I think the workshop is a nice test to put this into action.
Yeah, so hopefully, if nothing else, this kind of opened your eyes to the power of building your brand in your market, how it's going to make your life a whole lot easier. And frankly, it's a lot of fun because you get to share a lot of the good work you're doing with people and make that your identity in the market. So that's Doug and Pat with another episode of the Wealthy Gym Owners.